Hello, Bible readers. It's Tuesday, January 26th. We're reading from Proverbs chapters 7 through 9 and John chapter 16, verse 25 through chapter 17, verse 26. I'm going to start with Proverbs. Proverbs has an interesting set of chapters as we get into this femme fatale and wisdom personified, and then kind of what house you end up with. So let me say a couple words about this. As I read through chapter 7, which in the book that I read, the commentary says, a tale of seduction and death. That sounds, that title's a little more exciting maybe than I experienced chapter 7, but it is, One line says, because sexuality is such a powerful force in the male experience, it serves in Proverbs as a paradigm for that self-limitation that human beings need in relation to all earthly goods. Of course, the temptations and good choices that lead to life instead of death is what Proverbs is all about, passing on generational wisdom. And so, these chapters begin with chapter 1, it basically says right away, this is for, from a father to a son, and so to talk about making good choices, and how could I talk about the most difficult of choices? I'll use sexuality. That's what the author or authors of Proverbs, that's the tool they choose to use. And then that continues, of course. In chapter 8, we get wisdom's cosmic speech. I thought it was interesting. Oftentimes we think of, it's happened quite a bit in the not so distant past, that wisdom has been equated with the Holy Spirit. Almost like the Old Testament's version of talking about the Holy Spirit. But the poem clearly distinguishes wisdom from God. For wisdom is created by God, chapter 8, verse 22 here, and was with God during the process of creation. Wisdom is intimately associated with the Lord and is instrumental in creation. However, she is not identified with God. Wisdom is an independent entity. I just think that's important for us to recognize that wisdom is not exactly the Holy Spirit. And then chapter 9, two houses at the end of the road. The food and drink prepared by Lady Wisdom are metaphors for the life-giving gifts of creation. Her house is full, and she offers in effect to fill the house of her guests. To enter Wisdom's house is to enter the life-giving center of the cosmos, a Garden of Eden, where creation's goods are most intensely present and accessible. Here the cosmos is in order, and humans are in harmony with its life-giving principles. And so that's, of course, where you want to end up. The goal of a wise person's path is Wisdom's house, in contrast to the deadly house of the strange woman, or folly, capital F. So that's what this section of Proverbs has been about. Chapter 9 concludes. These first 9 chapters are kind of their own book within a book, and we'll move into more soon. Then we have John. In John, Jesus' future victory, his glorification in the events of his hour, is the present reality. The Jesus who speaks in this farewell discourse is the Jesus who has already conquered the world. So our idea of present and future gets mishmashed in the Gospel of John here. The voice of Jesus that reassures the disciples and points them to their future is the voice of the risen Jesus, even though he isn't risen yet. John 14-16 is an ingenious eschatological, that's a big word, discourse, but eschatology is like God's time brought into our time, the end of times. Because it brings God's future into the present of the gospel narrative by announcing that this is the moment of victory. John 16:33 announces that God's new age, initiated by Jesus' victory over the world, has entered the present. Jesus' victory over the world thus transforms conventional understandings of present and future. It can be confusing reading John. Why is he talking about future now, Pat? What are we doing here? And so I just wanted to name that is by design. Finally, chapter 17, these first 26 verses, Jesus' prayer for the community. Jesus places the church's future in the hands of God and invites the church to listen in on that conversation. The church's future is thus shown to be God's, not ours. That is, the future of the church ultimately does not depend on or derive from the church's own work, but rests with God. When contemporary readers overhear this prayer, they are brought face to face with the sovereign grace of God. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us, at all times and in all places.